Bionicle Legends 9 Shadows in the Sky. Written by Greg Farshty. Recording by L.J. Johnson. Chapter 2. Phantoka avoided, just barely, a bolt of shadow energy aimed at him. He maneuvered higher and peppered his two attackers with a barrage of light bursts. It didn't stop them, barely even slowed them down, but it still felt good. Even a few hours ago, it would have been impossible for the Matoran to meet the Makuta head-on in the sky and try to drive them off. But Tanma had been right. That soundless explosion of light had changed things. Caught out in the open, the powerful trio of Makuta had been blinded by the energy surge. Whether as permanent or temporary, no one knew, but it gave the Matoran an edge, and they were going to take advantage. The Makuta had wasted no time in improvising. They had begun using the Shadow Matoran of their creation as eyes. Each Makuta would carry a Matoran rider into battle. Of course, not every Shadow Matoran was quick-witted enough for the job. Those who weren't were returned to the captured villages, although not always gently. Phantoka glanced to his right. Tanma, Solak, and their squad were barraging the Makuta with light, trying to drive them toward Phantoka's force. As he watched, the attack turned into a disaster. The Makuta used their gravity powers to send half a dozen Matoran plunging toward the swamp, and it took the combined efforts of the rest of the squad to halt their descent. Bolts of chain lightning then hit the entire group, shocking some unconscious and driving most back to the village. Tanma and Solak darted toward Phantoka. "We have to pull back," said Tanma, "before they cut us off from home." "I think they have other plans," yelled Solak. "Look out!" The three Makuta had gained altitude, flying up near the ceiling of the chamber. Once they were over the Matoran, they unleashed the Tridax pods they carried. The pods split open on release, raining shadow leeches down. Before the Matoran force could react, two of their number had been hit. The leeches rapidly drained the light out of the unfortunate villagers, turning them into Shadow Matoran. Phantoka hurled light blasts at both, stunning them. "Let's go!" he shouted. The remaining Matoran rocketed back toward the village, dodging leeches and blasts of shadow energy as they went. Amazingly, the way home was clear. It looked as if they were going to make it. That is, until six powerful figures suddenly appeared right in their path. Pohatu NOA had been a Toa of stone his entire life. In that time, he had seen a lot of strange things. There was the voice of Makuta of Metronui coming out of a Matoran body, hordes of mechanical Borak attacking his village, hissing Rakshi on the rampage, monstrous Barag and robotic Exotoa, and, of course, a Matoran suddenly becoming a Toa of light. And that had all been in 1 year! But a squad of flying Matoran headed right for him, pursued by shadowy, bat-winged figures? That was a new one. A less experienced Toa would have been too shocked to react. One moment, he and the rest of the Toa Nuva were knee-deep in snowdrifts in Artaka. The next, they were here. Wherever here was, though it did look vaguely familiar. Yes, a novice Toa would have been wondering how he was managing to hover in midair, how come he wasn't crashing to the ground, and how he got here in the first place. But not Pohatu NOA. He had a clear, simple view of life that served him well. It was a pretty good guess the big nasties with darkness trailing behind them were the bad guys, and the Matoran darting all over the sky were the good guys. He was a Toa. Always had been, probably always would be. That meant it was time to kick some bat-winged tail. "I love this job," he said to himself as he soared into battle. Kopaka NOA, Toa of Ice, watched Pohatu go charging right into the thick of things. His other partners had shown the good sense to scatter and try to figure out the situation before acting. But not Pohatu. No, he was swooping and diving like a crazed gecko bird. Logically, Kopaka should have hung back until he had a better idea of the enemy's abilities. Plunging into battle with no plan was a sure way to get defeated. Cold, clear analysis dictated that Pohatu had made his choice. It was the wrong one, and no one else should be put at risk because of it. There was only one problem. Kopaka liked Pohatu. The Toa of Stone was everything Kopaka wasn't. Open, warm, friendly. So the two of them being friends was hard for most to picture. Kopaka, after all, was guarded, icy, far from trusting, and sometimes downright rude. But Pohatu had never asked or expected him to be anything else, which set the Toa of Stone apart from most. Maybe that was why, grumbling all the way, Kopaka shot through the air toward the scene of battle. Lea NOA was happier than he had ever been. The Toa of Air was in his element, soaring through the skies, and he was doing it without just a mask of levitation and wind currents to glide on. His new armor let him rocket through the sky, and that was fine by him. He had narrowly avoided a collision with the oncoming Matoran. Looking behind, he saw some of them were turning around.
"Probably want to quick find out who we are," he thought. "Like to ask them the same question, after we clean up the mess here."
Up ahead, Pohatu, Onua, Kopaka, and Tahu were all having problems mastering combat in the air. Only Gali, used to fighting underwater, was easily holding her own in a new environment. One of the monstrous flyers was closing in on Onua NOA. Some kind of pod was dropping from the creature. Lea doubted it was a naming day present. He hit it with a blast of air and it shattered, sending dark leeches flying through the sky. Lea was about to create a mini cyclone to trap one, knowing Kopaka would want to study it, when something slammed into his back.
"No! Leave it alone!"
Lea twisted his neck to see who was now sitting on top of him. It was one of the Matoran, a green-armored Matoran from the look of him, now riding Lea like the Toa was a flying Rahi beast.
"Are you crazy?"
said Lea Nuva.
"Get off of me! I don't carry fly passengers!"
"Stay away from that shadow leech!"
Tanma insisted.
"And watch out! The Makuta's coming back this way!"
"Makuta? Where?"
asked Lea, looking around. All he saw was the bat creature heading toward him, with a black armored Matoran riding it.
"You mean that Matoran?"
Tanma yanked hard on Lea's neck, forcing him to veer to the left. Irritated, Lea reached back and hit his rider with a cyclone wind, blowing the Matoran off his back.
"I hate backseat drivers,"
the Toa muttered. Lea glanced down to make sure the Matoran was safe, only to see that his flight pack was starting to sputter. As he began to fall, Lea swooped down underneath so that the Matoran landed on the Toa's back. Images suddenly flashed through Lea's mind of events he had never witnessed. He saw Matoran going down to the swamp below and never returning. Panic as the three bat creatures attacked again and again, turning the entire villages into places of shadow, and the soundless explosion of light and power that changed everything in Kartanui. The experience shook Lea so much that he almost crashed into one of the captured villages, veering up only at the last moment. It took him a second to realize someone was inside his head, and he was viewing their memories. Fortunately, Traga Anoa back on the island of Matanui had taught all the Toa Nuva something about shielding their minds from intrusion.
"Hey!" he snapped. "Get out of my head thoughts!"
"Why would I want to be in your head?" Tanma shot back. "Who are you anyway? You look like something Solek would dream up."
"I'm a Toa hero, here to save you from whatever it is you need saving from," said Lea. "And what's a Solek?"
Tahu Nuva, Toa Fire and leader of the Toa Nuva, wished it was the old days again. As he answered shadow energy bursts with jets of flame, he was remembering a time when he would have plowed right into the middle of a battle without thinking twice. Experience had taught him it was better to have a plan. Make one, be sure your partners know it, and stick to it. That was the best approach. Life, unfortunately, wasn't going to stop while you did that. And sometimes it dropped you right in the midst of an all-out war without so much as a guess where you're going. Even with that, some things hadn't changed. His Kanohi Nuva mask of shielding still worked, although it did look different. He was able to throw a force field around himself, Gali, and Onua in time to protect them from a bolt of shadow, and Onua NOA was still one of the best strategists he had ever met. It was the Toa of Earth who had spotted the enemy's weakness.
"They can't see well, or maybe at all,"
Onua had said.
"I should know. With all the light in here, I can hardly see myself. That's why they need the Matoran." "Then we aim for the Matoran," said Tahu. "See if we can knock them off their backs."
"Tahu, we're supposed to protect Matoran," Gali said. "What if those riders are being forced to help?"
"Simple rule," the Toa Fire replied. "First priority goes to protecting Matoran, who aren't shooting shadow at me."
Tahu's strategy seemed to work. At least, the bat-winged beings broke off their attack. If it was more a matter of the enemy wanting to take stock of a new factor in the battle before continuing the fight than concern for the Matoran riders, it still meant a chance for the Toa Nuva to regroup.
So, nasty Rahi they've got around here,"
said Lea. "You know that isn't what they are," answered Kopaka.
"I know," Lea said, shrugging. "Just didn't want to be the first one to say it."
"Too many questions," said Kopaka. "Let's hope the Matoran have some answers."
"Right. Way too many,"
agreed Lea. He began to count them off on his fingers.
"What happened to our armor, and masks, and weapons? What does the Brotherhood of Makuta want with this place? Who are all these Matoran, and why are they here? And where is here?"
Pohatu looked around. Something was nagging at the back of his mind, clawing to be free like a stone rat trapped in its hole. And then, suddenly, he remembered.
Wait,
He said.
it's different now. Very different. But, don't you recognize it? Guys, we've come home.
End of chapter 2.